So today we're stirring the pot and we're talking about drayage freight. And I really like drayage freight because it's what helped to save our business when we first got started. And what do I mean when I say help to save it? Well, it helped to produce a steady stream of cash flow coming into the business. And what a new business needs more than anything else, you probably know this by now, is cash flow. Why is that? Because cash flow, when you do it right, eventually leads to profits. And all of our business needs profits coming into our business for us to survive. Now, what is drayage freight? Drayage freight is freight that moves in short distances. For example, with us, we had a drayage contract and freight moved back and forth between two warehouses, a cold storage warehouse and a dry goods warehouse, a 7-mile radius all day long. And that is a very good mission, not hard at all to manage. And one of the best things about it, again, is it gets that profit to flowing. And then the next best thing about it is that, of course, your shippers give you really big kudos when you can go out and service that type of contract very well, because they are very likely having issues with that on their own, which is the reason why they're coming to you. And when you can go out and provide great service on it, they're going to give you that big pat on the back. And that's always a good thing. When you're making good money and your shipper is happy, that eventually leads to more opportunity. So that's a win-win-win, and that's what we like to see. Now, on the other side of that is drayage freight comes with some big challenges. Number one, the first and foremost challenge is you have to find a carrier with the resources to service that type of mission. That's not easy. That's like looking for a needle in a haystack sometimes. And the second thing that's really difficult is that you have to know how to price that type of mission. You just can't put a number on and say, oh, this is going to work. You have to look at the details of the mission. You have to look at the requirement and then price it according to that, and making sure that your shipper is happy, your carrier is happy, and of course you're happy because you're getting a decent profit as well. Most important, you want to make sure that your carrier will be satisfied with this price. So you're going to make sure that you're talking to that carrier. When you start to discuss price, you're going to be really on top of that, because this is what usually happens. If you come in and you price too low and the carrier comes in and say, oh, okay, it might work, I'll go ahead and get it started. Well, when they go out and get started and they're looking their checks after a couple of months, and then they're looking at the type of resources they're committing to this project, then they say, oh man, I'm pulling my resources back. I'm not going to be able to service this because I'm not making enough money. So we got to make sure that it's priced correctly so that your carrier can win and he'll continue to service the mission. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the two biggest issues that we face when we are servicing this type of mission. Number one is finding the carrier, and number two is pricing the mission. We're going to show you how to navigate those two issues. So come on inside, sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. Now let's get down into the business. Okay, so today let's talk about the number one issue that freight brokers usually have when they are trying to cover a mission like a drayage mission. The mission that I'm explaining is one that requires you to go 8 miles in distance, that's it, back and forth all day long, every day for a 12-month period. Now, it is going to be tough to find a carrier to commit to that. Why? Because you're talking about a carrier that usually has about 5 trucks or less, owner-operators. And now what you're asking him to do is to commit 2 of his trucks over a 12-month period of time, and he has to have a driver. So, of course, price is going to come into that. We'll get into price in a minute. We're just talking about right now choosing a carrier. That is going to be a tall order. Don't expect that you're just going to call a few carriers and you'll get people to bite on that. You probably won't. It took us over a month to find a carrier that was willing to do that type of mission. And then when we found a carrier to do it, we had to make sure that he understood the mission. So we wanted to have something in writing from our shipper that explained the mission. That way we can articulate what's expected of our carrier, because the last thing that you want to happen is your carrier to say yes, and then he gets to the facility and they start talking to him about the mission, and they're talking about a whole lot of things that you haven't told them. So you want to make sure that you have a clear understanding of the mission so that you can articulate that to your carrier so that everything is on the table, there are no surprises, and when we get to the meeting, when we're talking to the shipper, everything is understood and we're ready to move forward, instead of going into that meeting and then new things being thrown at him. And then he says, hey, let me back up. I got to rethink this. And then he probably comes back and tell you at some point, I'm not able to do it. So let's just make sure that we get everything out on the table. Everything is clear and upfront, and he understands it, and then he can make a decision. All right, so now let's talk about price. Price is going to be the most important part of all of this, because we know if the price is not right, you're not going to get a carrier to service this mission. That's just the bottom line. So we got to make sure that the price is right. How do we make sure that the price is right? Well, when I look at the requirement and I start digging in on the details of the requirement, I am going to come up with what I consider a solid price for this particular mission. But remember, I am a freight broker. I am not a carrier. So I am not going to depend just on what I come up with. After I come up with a price, then I'm going to sit down with the carrier. The whole reason for me even coming up with my price is because I just want to make sure that I have a ballpark figure or have some idea of where I think the carrier would be. So when I'm putting those numbers together, I'm putting my numbers together just to bounce them off to figure out, okay, is he really way out there or is he pretty close to where we are? Now, if he's way out there, I might try and reel him back in. Or I might look at it and say, maybe I'm way off, because a carrier knows his numbers. He knows what he needs to be at in order to make it work. At least the good carriers know that. So I want them to give me their price, because remember, they are the ones that's going to be servicing this mission. If they are satisfied, they'll continue to service the mission. If they're not, it's a possibility they'll walk away from the mission. So I want to make sure that that carrier is satisfied with the price. How I'm going to do that is I'm going to give him the opportunity to give me his price. I want him to dig down on the numbers and give me his price. And 9 times out of 10, I am going to take his price back to the shipper, because he knows what he needs to get paid in order to make it work. I don't necessarily, have the knowledge or the skill set to know that in the way that he does. He knows his truck a whole lot better than I do. He knows his numbers a whole lot better than I do. So I am going to depend on him to give me those numbers, and then I'm going to take those numbers to the shipper. Now, if the number I think is way, way off, I'm not going to take that number. I'll probably come back and tell him, listen, I want to make sure that we get the contract. If that's what you want to do, then I think we need to make a, adjustment on these numbers. Let's take a look at it and see if we can adjust the numbers. But now let's back up a little bit. How can I say that? How can I say that, hey, I think you might want to make an adjustment on the numbers? Because before I even go to the carrier, I am going to go to that shipper and ask, hey, what are you currently doing this contract for? What are you getting on this, or what are you paying on this contract? The reason why I want to know that is because I want to have some idea of what he's willing to pay. And then I want to have some idea of what's going on with the carrier that you currently have servicing the contract, because there's a reason that he's coming out of it. It may be because he's not making enough money. And the second part about the payment that we need to get figured out is how the carrier will be paid. You see, most times shippers may want to pay on a 30 to 45 day payment schedule on this type of mission. When we presented that to the carrier was flat against that. He said there's no way he wanted to wait 30 to 45 days to get paid. As a matter of fact, he wouldn't be able to do that. So we went back, we told the shipper that. They at first didn't want to pay every 2 weeks, but they looked at it and said, hey, it's been hard for you guys to cover this load. It's hard for us to cover it. We have a carrier. If he wants to get paid every 2 weeks, we'll just have to get with accounting and make sure he's paid in the way that he wants to be paid. So now, how do you get opportunity to move drayage freight? Well, it's very simple. You have to start talking to your shipper and finding out more about what's going on in their business, and then letting them know that you are here to provide assistance. That's what it's all about. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. I certainly hope this information has been helpful. If you want to learn more about the freight broker business, I'll leave a free link in the description. It's my 5-video series titled How the Load Movement Process Works. It'll give you a look into the freight broker business. That way you can see how it works. And then if you're interested in coming into it, you can come into it in the light instead of in the dark. And if you want to know more about what to say to shippers, I'll leave you a free link right here. So until the next time, I wish you the very best in your life and business. See you at the top, because the bottom is much too crowded.